Today. I'm really glad you could join us. So today we're making a little veer from what we typically do. We're almost always talking about business credit financing and what you need to do there to be able to get the money you need to start and grow your business. But with us today is a very special guest. And you know, I rarely bring special guests in, but in this case, I wanted to bring somebody in very special that's going to teach us 5 different hacks to be able to supercharge any business. And the reason for this is because when I look at the hundreds and hundreds of questions that we get regularly from you, from our tribe, we find that a lot of you are having problems not just getting the money you need to grow your business, but to actually get your business off the ground and then supercharge it so it can actually grow and scale once you have the funds to do so. So with us today is Howard Shore. Now, Howard has founded Activate Group, and after 20 years of holding various leadership positions in private industry, including CEO, and achieving exceptional results for companies such as Ryder, AutoNation, and KPMG LLP. Now, at the helm of Activate Group, he's become one of the country's premier business executive coaches, helping hundreds of executives and their teams improve their professional performance. He's also a certified public accountant, certified Gazelle coach, as well as certified executive coach, certified behavior analyst as well, certified values analysis, and certified attributes index analyst as well. Now, he earned his bachelor and MBA from Florida International University and completed advanced executive programs at Harvard Law School and the University of Chicago. Most importantly, I know Howard as a very good friend to me personally when I run into issues on the executive coaching side, or when I run into issues all the way around finance. This is the guy that I turn to. In his book, which he's got a couple books, and he'll talk to you about both of them probably today, but in his book, Your Business is a Leaky Bucket, I can't begin to tell you how many tips we got out of here at Credit Suite that helped us make our business substantially more profitable. And literally his newest book is the one at the top of the pile on my nightstand right now that I'm getting ready to jump into and really excited to. So Howard, man, thanks for all the help that you've provided me, and thanks for agreeing to come on and talk to our tribe today about some ways that they can supercharge your business. I'm glad you're here.
Man, I'm super happy to be here. And one thing I can say about you is, you know, we have givers in the world, we have takers in the world, and you're definitely one of those givers. And so I love having you in my circle.
I appreciate that, man. I'm glad to be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm not leaving the stream. I'm going to remove myself from view from everybody here. I'm going to put you front and center. I'm going to tee up your slide deck, and I'm hoping that you can really help our entire audience here be able to figure out ways that they can supercharge the business the same as you have me. So I'm going to sit back here in the background, and I'm going to let you take over, my friend.
Awesome. So I'm going to tell everybody that's listening to this, I am certain whether you are a sole proprietor or somebody that's running a company with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, there are going to be some tips here that will definitely increase your top line and your bottom line. See, one thing that I've learned and truly believe is that every one of us, every leader in every company has substantially more growth opportunity than you ever imagined. And the tips I'm going to use today is what's helped me create over $1 billion worth of value during my career. And every single business we work with and every single business that leader that has read that book that he was just mentioning to you, Your Business is a Leaky Bucket, have found if they just implement even one of the ideas I have today, it's worth significant money to you. And I'm going to go back for a second, because this morning I was meeting with a CEO of a high growth company, highly profitable company, and when we talked for just about half an hour this morning, he realized his bar was being set too low, that he had aggressive growth plans, and in his mind, 25% was going to be great growth this year. And we talked about one problem, which actually is addressed in one of the hacks I have today. And now his goal for this year is to grow 100%, and it's highly achievable, right there in his grasp, and he couldn't see it just by applying certain things. And quick part about my story is I am sharing with you the things I wish I knew when I owned my first business when I was 18 back in 1983. When I look forward and I sold that business when I was 21, I got to be honest with everyone listening to this, I cringe when I think of how horrible a leader I was and how much money I left on the table. I was super proud of selling a company, super proud of having an exit, and then I realized it could have been so much bigger, so much better, even if I still sold at age 21. So I'm going to share with you these tips. And so what I want to tell you about is to start to kind of frame this is I'll never forget when Russ at Titan Restoration came to me several years back, and he's like, listen, Howard, I'm really proud of my company. It's taken me 20 years to grow to $7 million. And he's like, while I'm proud and I know that's great, he knew they were capable of so much more. And as we talked further and further and got to the root of where he was stuck, one of the things that came up was, he's like, Howard, I work the hardest in my company. The only reason my company is where it's at is where there's just a few of us leaders that are carrying 80% of the weight. And he's like, I don't know how to get out of that. And so fast forward now just a few years, we started talking about the things and we implemented the strategies that were in my book. And then he went from taking him 20 years to get to 7 million. He was at $22 million plus after 3 years, applying these concepts we're going to talk about today. But most importantly, revenue's vanity, profit sanity, cash is king. He had 5 times the profit margin, net profit margin of the industry average. And the key here was unlocking the potential of the rest of the 80% of employees that were not engaged. So we tripled the level of number of employees engaged, percentage of employees engaged in his business. And that is no secret why we were able to triple the size of the company over that period of time. So here's what I want you to take away in a very short time. And I know I'm going to talk fast, but I want to make sure you get high maximum value so you walk away from this and this is the best meeting you have had all week. So first of all, I want to make sure that you know there's only 21 ways that you can change your financial story. And I'm going to share with you what those are. I'm going to share with the 5 profit growth hacks that you came to listen to this for. And I'm going to make sure that you have actions to take as soon as you leave. The first thing I have to make sure is that you have an open mind. If we were in a room right now and I asked everybody, raise your hand, who has an open mind right now? Everybody always opens up their mind, and then I laugh. And I laugh because the last time we all truly had an open mind was when we were born. And then we've been screwing it up ever since. And what I mean by that is the more experience we have, the more success we have, all right, the more knowledge we think we have, the less we have an open mind. We just short circuit things we shouldn't short circuit. And, you know, examples of this, we used to think the fastest way we could travel was on a horse. We used to think the world, everything in the universe revolved around us, and we couldn't run a 4-minute mile. Now you fast forward and all of that was belief. It actually wasn't knowledge. It wasn't fact. So our challenge that we make sure that we have an open mind as much as possible so we don't leave significant money on the table. So let me give you a real life example of something we were taught that is actually not always true, and it's 1 + 1 + 1. It doesn't always equal 3. And you're like, Howard, what do you mean? I mean, it's simple. It's math. They taught us that in school. I said, well, it's not 3 when we're changing our financial statements. So this was a live financial statement of a client of ours. And one of the things is they were really proud because they grew 52% to get to that approximately $10 million you see in the first column here on the left. But what we figured out real quickly was their profit barely ever grew. And so I didn't want to discourage them from growing so fast, but I wanted to encourage them to have more cash and more profit. And actually, in this case, they were about to go bankrupt. And that's a whole nother story because they didn't realize their whole financial picture. But then we sat down and we said, all right, so what happens if we grow revenue by 1%? What happens if we just expand gross margin by 1% of revenue? What happens if we reduce overhead, selling, general, and administrative expenses by 1% of revenue? Look at the bottom. The bottom grew 42%, not 3%. I just did this with a client last week. We put their numbers up there. That number was 90%, all right? For most of you listening, if you just improved 1 + 1 + 1 every single quarter, your bottom line is usually going to grow somewhere between 25 and 30%. The smallest I've ever seen is 17%. But the most important thing I want you to realize is when you listen to everything else I'm going to say today, even if you've heard it before, if you can apply it just 1% better, your bottom line may grow 42%. So let's get going, all right? So I created this super tool that I want to make sure you have access to, and I'm going to make sure that you know how to get it for free, apply it yourself, because I want you to apply these concepts. I created this super tool because I realized most leaders, even in $50, $100 million companies, didn't really understand what was going on in their financial statements. You see, the real issue, and I'm a CPA, as you saw in the background, was debits and credits can add up. We can go bankrupt. But then the other thing is if you just look at what's in your income statement, you're going to miss the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the problems you need to worry about aren't actually showing up in your financial statements. So for example, if I were to go into your income statement right now and I would look for an line item that said, I hired a dumbass, would I find it? The answer is no. I wouldn't find any dumbass line in your financial statements. But the reality is, because you have, and because you probably have too many people that don't belong in your company, it's costing you significant dollars. And financial statements only capture transactions. So it'll capture the payroll of that person. It won't capture the revenue you lost, the customers you lost, the profits you lost, because it's the wrong person. All right. And then the other things you're not going to find in there is things like you didn't grow because you didn't really have a unique and different value for the marketplace. And because you were missing that, you didn't grow. Well, there's no financial statement line item that says, I don't have a strategy. So what I want you to think about going forward, and what I'm going to teach you about right now to make sure at minimum you walk away with this, is the things in your financial statements that you don't see are the ones that are the biggest opportunities for your company. It's not cutting expenses, it's actually leveraging every dollar you spend differently. So let me get to that 21 ways. All right, there's only 7 ways, 7 financial levers we can use in any business. All right, so you go to the top line and everybody knows they have this revenue number. There's only 2 ways to change it. All right, I can change the volume of what I sell, or I can change the price. And what's interesting is changing price is more valuable than changing volume. And the reason is when you change the price, 100% of that money typically goes directly to the bottom line because we have no extra costs associated with increasing price. But when we get to volume, there's always a cost related to an incremental cost typically to whenever we sell and increase volume. So that's the first thing I want you to walk away. So when you think about moving your revenue number, you've got to ask, what are the moves I'm going to make that is going to change volume, and what pricing moves can I make that's actually going to grow my top line? Then the next place I'm going to look is I'm going to get to that other 1%, which is your direct costs as a percentage of revenue. If I can reduce that as a percentage of revenue over time, then that is the next way I want to do it, because otherwise, as you grow revenue, your costs are growing consistently with that revenue when we're looking at your direct costs. And so our job is to figure out how to grow and expand that margin. So when you're in a planning session, when you're thinking about improving your bottom line, you've got to start asking yourself, how do I change the cost formula for every dollar of revenue I create? And then the last way you can improve your income statement, and this is a big problem I see in a lot of organizations, in many cases, your overhead, your selling general administrative expenses that should be fixed is not fixed, and it's growing faster than revenue. Or it's growing with revenue, and it shouldn't. You should be able to grow revenue faster than you grow your selling general and administrative expenses, or overhead, which is what most of us call it, and that's when you know you're scaling. So you want to start asking yourself, how do we grow faster? How do we get more gross margin and not have to incrementally increase overhead at the same rate? So those are the only 4 ways you can improve your income statement. The other place you need to look, and this is where that other company was going to go bankrupt, they weren't even paying attention to their balance sheet. And when you look at your balance sheet, you got to look at ratios, not dollars. See, if accounts receivable goes up, That may not be a bad thing. If revenue is doubling, you're going to see an increase in your accounts receivable balance. But what you want to see is you want to see how that balance relates to your income statement, and you have a ratio called days receivable outstanding. And what you want to see is that you're collecting receivables faster. The faster you collect it, the more money that comes in the bank. And the longer it takes you, you may be growing faster, but you actually may go bankrupt because you're not collecting it. The next thing we want to do is you actually want to start thinking about your payable speed. So I have one client that actually halved how fast they were paying their customers. And what I mean by that is they were paying them 50% faster. Now, most of you say that's great. They had plenty of cash. They did it. What you don't realize is your payables is free financing. So as long as you're following the terms, and the more you can extend the terms where your vendors are happy, then you can slow down how fast you have to pay money out before you get it in. And maybe you can get it in before you pay it out. So what we want to do is want to increase payable speed. The last thing you can do for those of you that have inventory, work in process because you're in construction or in manufacturing, we want to speed up the cycle time and the amount of terms that you have on your inventory and your work in process, because you're using the same cost structure to pull it through. And we want to, the faster we move that through and the more we can use the same money, the better your cash model is. So now with those 7 ways to improve your cash system, and I'm certain all of you, if you're listening carefully, have never really looked at financial statements in that way, thinking outside the box of what's in the financial statements to figure out how to move them. There's only 3 ways that you can move all 7 triggers, right? The first one is right people in the right seats. That is the first place to look. That is where most businesses are leaking significant growth, significant profit, significant cash, because you're not paying enough attention to the right people and the right seats. And I'll tell you more in a little bit. The second way is to improve your business model. So rather than scaling and adding the same number of bodies to generate the revenue, how can we use technology? How can we reduce mistakes is the third way in which I would look at this. So reduce mistakes, improve your business model, which by the way is not always technology. Sometimes it's stopping the way you do things and not doing certain things. And then the last thing is right people, right seats. So 3 times 7 is 21, which is where I came up with 21 ways that you can improve your financial position every quarter and change your story. So now let's get to those 5 growth hacks, because that's what you're here for. You're like, all right, so I get this whole thing, people, I get this whole thing process, and I get this whole thing innovation, but so what? How do I make this simple for you to improve your position in your company? So these are the 5 hacks I'm going to go through. Right people, right seats, filling open positions, price, operational mistakes, and prioritizing properly. And these things, when applied better, will get you to where you need to go. So the first thing is, we always heard from Jim Collins, first who, then what? We always knew if we don't have the right people, we're not going to get the same performance, but you're usually not measuring it. All of our clients, every single quarter, and we have a tool for this, but this is a simplistic way to look at it, is what I want you to do is I want you to think on 2 dimensions for every single person in your company. Do they consistently live every one of your core values? And by the way, when they don't, everything slows down, they slow everybody else around them, and they create and suck more management time in dealing with those personnel, drama issues, and all of that, because they don't live your core values. The next thing, which we're usually used to, is measuring and meeting performance requirements. Now, with most of you, if I came to you and I asked you, is there 1 or 2 key performance indicators for every single position in your company? Are you monitoring it, and are you holding somebody accountable to you? If you're honest, there's definitely some people in your company that don't have KPIs, key performance indicators, and in many cases, most of them don't have them, or they're there, but they're not being measured and monitored, and the feedback mechanism's not there. So what I want you to do every quarter is I want you to measure how many people are living all your values and how many are also meeting your performance standards. Everybody else on your team that's not doing that, anybody who's in these 3 boxes here, are not performing. So I want to make sure that you know every single month how many people are not performing, and I want you to do something about it. And here's a dirty little secret. The reason you don't do it is you've never quantified, which is what my calculator does, quantifies for you what is it costing you today because of your non-performance. So what I want you to realize is managers on average are costing you anywhere between 5 and 25 times salary when they're not performing, not living your core values, not driving the key performance indicators they're accountable to. And staff is costing you anywhere between 2 and 7 times salary. You'll notice in my calculator that I only put 5 for managers and 2.5 times for staff, because to me that's like the minimum. Otherwise, why would I hire a manager? Why would I have that person if I can not at least get 2.5 times their salary back in profit because I have that person? So what, excuse me, and there's a bunch of data. You read my book, it'll tell you more data about that. There's a bunch of data behind where those numbers came from, but they're from actually measuring and going back and looking at what somebody truly cost me because I didn't hold them accountable, what they cost me because I didn't fill the seats right. And what you'll see is, so if you have a $50,000 staff member, this is what I want you to get in your head. Every day, you allow that person not to perform. You allow them not to live your core values. It's costing you $480 a day for a $50,000 staff person. It's costing you $2,400 a week. It's costing you $10,400 a month and $125,000 a year. And you can see that's from the 2.5 times the number that you're actually investing in somebody to get a return on that person. I want you to stop thinking about people as costs, and I want you to think about what they're going to return for you for every dollar you spend. So what you're going to do when you go back home is you're going to actually figure out, by using that matrix I shared with you, is how many people that you have that are not in the upper right-hand quadrant, the one that says performing. Everybody else is costing you at least 2.5 times their salary. Forget about the fact that they're producing for you and that you're actually getting something back from them. Realize that if they were truly performing, you're getting at least 2.5 times return in profit. So now what I want to talk to you about is open positions. To me, this is the #1 problem in most companies, and you are underinvesting to solve this problem. I just got off the phone with a CEO. The #1 reason he's not doubling this year is because he's not hiring fast enough. He's not hiring the right people. And then as we talked, he's high growth. And I'm like, so who do you have working full-time that is just a master recruiter, super recruiter, awesome at getting bodies in here so you can hire? And he had none. And most companies I go in, you might even have a recruiter, but they suck. And it's costing you a ton of money not to invest in a position. All our companies that are crushing it right now have doubled and tripled up in what they're investing in getting right bodies in and making sure they're right bodies so they don't have to replace them. And what I mean by right bodies is if you look at the national average, the average company only hires right 25% of the time. And it's likely that's you also. And so if you only hire right 25% of the time, what I want to get you to see is if you had to hire 10 people this year, it would take 31 people before you hired 10 right people. I don't know about you. I definitely don't want to hire 31 people. Well, you don't do that unless your people aren't trained on how to interview, you have a great process around selection, you have enough of the right bodies so you're not picking the best of the worst because that's all you've got in front of you. And what you want to do is you want to get up to this 75% or above number, because once you're at hiring 75% of the time right, you'll actually only have to hire 11 people to get 10 right. Think about what that would do for your company and your culture and everything if we're getting more people staying longer, getting it right. But most importantly, I want you to invest in that recruiting function because you have to fill these positions faster. The next thing I want you to think about is payroll. too often, and this happens in every meeting I meet with a client, they are so worried about what they're used to paying for a position. And this is a great example where you have to stop thinking too much. I'm not saying don't think at all. Don't think too much about the hourly rates, the annual salaries, because what we know is when you get the right person, they produce 2 and 3 times that other person that you're hiring. And it's just one seat. So now it helps you avoid needing 2 and 3 more people to get to the same space, but you gotta pay right. And so Walmart versus Costco is a great example. Walmart is paying Costco is paying 66% more than Walmart for their average employee. But look what they get. They earn per employee $620,000 of revenue versus the 211, 3 times the return per employee in revenue by hiring smarter. Their profit per square foot is double. And as no surprise, you pay well, you hire right, you have a winning culture, their turnover is half. But a key is you've got to focus on your return on investment, not exactly what the investment is. And most of you have to be hiring at a whole nother level than you've been willing to do, because when you think about, well, I got to pay that money out today, it's going to tighten your bootstraps. At the end of the day, when you get out the other side, it produces a lot more. The other thing is I see people taking too long to fill positions. You should be getting ahead of the game, know your growth curve, know how many people you need as you get through the different levels of growth, and you should be hiring in advance. You should have a ready pipeline. You should even have a virtual bench of people that are ready to come on as you actually get rid of those non-performers or as you need more performers to support your growth. And that's where, by the way, that recruiting thing comes in. You better have enough people 100% focused on recruiting. Because here's the thing, let's go back to that $50,000 position. The math is the same. You would never fill a position unless you were going to get a return on it. So we can all agree with that. We should all agree also we want at least a 2.5 times return. In some of our clients, it's 7, even on those front line of workers, particularly in the technology industry where margins are super fat. Okay, but it gets back to the same numbers. Every day you have a position opened, it's costing you $480. Every week you have that position open, it's costing you $2,400, and you get the picture. It's the same as what I said when you hire and fill wrong. All right, so we want to fill this much, much faster, and I want you to consider spending a lot more money to get these people on faster, because it's going to cost you a lot less to get them on faster than it is not having them there. I can't tell you how many companies that are not growing as fast as they should because they can't fill the seats fast enough, and their quality is going down, and customer service is going down because they're straining their existing people. If you solve that problem, growth will change. That is why when growth changes and customers stay longer and employees stay longer, you actually see this big, fatter, juicy bottom line as you go through. The third thing I want to get at is price. So I'm going to stick with Costco here for a second, because sometimes we think about price wrong. So in Costco's case, 75% of their profit came from one pricing decision. It's that membership fee. That membership fee represents 75% of their annual profit, and it's how they fund the opening of all new stores. By making that one decision, that lousy $100, $150, I forget what I pay at this point, upfront, gives them free cash flow immediately to grow their business. So you need to start asking yourself in your business, is there a product? Is there a service? Is there a fee? Many of our clients add on fees. Listen, we hate going on airlines and hotels and seeing the fees, but folks, we pay them. That is pure profit for these companies. And I want to make sure that you're thinking about how you price your product. And remember the 1% rule. If we can increase price, that's 1% of overall revenue. That bottom line impact is huge. Huge, because you have no costs against it. So if you're doing $1 million of revenue, and you add 1%, think about that $100,000 that falls to your bottom line, pure profit, just because of price. The next thing I want you to think about is innovation. All right. So too often I go into businesses and and pricing, and many times you need innovation to change it. So in restoration, and we've got a lot of clients in the restoration and construction industry, and you're getting paid back by insurance companies. Listen, and you're in healthcare, they're always playing games so you forget to check a box, or you don't check all the boxes that you can to maximize maximum revenue on work you've already done. So one of our clients implemented technology that already existed in their business, implemented on every one of their jobs. They increased gross profit by 6%. Think about that. Your gross margin increasing by 6%. They were only doing about 35%. So think about the percentage growth in gross profit. It's huge. Their bottom line doubled when we got done doing this. So I want you to be thinking about how can you innovatively get better to stop making mistakes in pricing so you can make a better bottom line. Now, mistakes, we all have them in our business. If you're looking at your processes and saying, I need to fix everything, this is a huge problem. What I want you to do is I want you to find the big gaping holes, that one thing, if you solve it in a process, your numbers change dramatically. Let me give you a simple one, because most of you, your sales process sucks. It's broken. It's got a major thing. But I was working with a company called Treatment Solutions Network. They are in the industry of, basically, if you're familiar with the 12-step process, you've got a drug or alcohol problem, you get detoxed, you come out of the hospital, you wind up in one of these facilities. So I go to this client, we start working together, and we looked at their closing, and they were only closing about 25% of the inbound leads that were coming in. Now, keep in mind, these leads are coming from mostly their doctors, some online leads, but mostly their doctors are saying, go into this facility, they're good, and by the way, they have the insurance that you just used with us. So now they call up, and now they're only closing 25% of leads. I'm like, there's a huge problem here. So we sat on the sales floor, watched what was going on. There was one step in their process, one step. It was called an intake form. It was not being filled out. Because this intake form was being ignored by most of the salespeople most of the time, they were losing a lot of deals, a lot of people that they can save their lives. By implementing that and making it mandatory that on the first call, every single time you're going to fill in that form, their close ratio immediately went up to over 60%, starting that 1 week and never stopped. And by the way, that company had a new problem. They ran out of beds quickly, and they only needed about half the sales force they had when they first started with me, because now if you're closing a much higher percentage of the deal, you need far less leads, and now we had to solve our bed problem. So I want you to think about, in your company, not just sales, what process is not yielding what it should? What process is causing customers to not come back? And what is the one thing you want to get everybody rallied around to fix it so that your money just starts showing up in your income statement? So another one is kind of operational mistakes. So like I said, I do a lot of stuff in construction, but we do a lot of industries. But in construction, what we saw was actually a stupid, simple mistake you think about. So our client was starting a lot of deals, and they had no budget to measure anybody against. They'd get the job, they'd do an estimate, and then people would do whatever. They had no budget that they were held up against. They had no plan, and no one was holding anybody accountable. As soon as we went back into operations and said, all right, you're going to have a budget for every job before we start, and then we're going to measure against performance, margin went up dramatically. Mistakes stopped happening in terms of over purchasing things, using too much labor, doing too much travel back and forth. They thought it through and actually got closer and closer to that original estimate, and in many cases beat the estimate, so they made more money. So where in your company operationally are you not setting the standard and holding people to the standard, and then going back when you don't hit it to figure out how to solve it? So I've given you a few great ideas, right? I'm sure many of you, hopefully all of you, have a planning process. And so this is a funny thing about this word prioritization. So in planning, our job is to prioritize. all of us as owners, I've owned 9 businesses, okay? I've done everything from startup to over $1 billion of revenue. And our biggest problem is way too many things we could be working on. So this word prioritization, if you really look at the word itself, it starts with the word prior. In other words, what must be done first? Not what must be done, what must be done first. And we want to really narrow down the number of priorities to the things that are going to have the biggest impact on your bottom line, your biggest impact on growth. And then, unfortunately, you've got to get really comfortable at saying no at all the other stuff that may be nagging you and bothering you, but doesn't freaking matter. So I want to give you a process as you're planning. I want you to go through this and I want you to think about it, and I want you to do this better. Is I want you to think about, of all the things you can do, what things are really low impact and low degree of difficulty. So the problem I see in most businesses, you're spending all your time in that bottom left-hand quadrant. And I consider that the equivalent of chasing bubbles. Where did I come that from? So my kids are grown, but when they were young, we used to have birthday parties. And at those birthday parties, we'd buy all the bubbles, we'd set everybody up, we'd get them going. When we got done at the end of the party, the kids never came back and said, man, I'm so glad we did the bubbles. Dad and Mom, can we do bubbles every day? No, it wasn't the part of the party. All we did was fill time. We didn't make the impact for the kids as great as it could be because we were filling time with bubbles. The bubbles only usually lasted about 5 minutes before they got bored. And then the other thing most of you are guilty of is chasing squirrels. So if we go back, I used to have a dog. His name was Kramer. Loved Kramer. Well trained, was always by my heel. He's a 75-pound dog. We're doing great. We're walking along, and then all of a sudden that squirrel would shut off. It would show up. Kramer's brain would shut off, and he was like Houdini. I'd have him in one of those harness leashes. Kramer could get out of there in split second, like Houdini, and then he was off to the races. Now here's the thing. After 17 years, Kramer never caught a squirrel. And I always wondered, if he did, then what? He'd be super excited, maybe pat himself on the back, be super excited, but then what is he going to do with it, right? It's really high degree of difficulty, and when you get done, at best, a fleeting moment. All right, so what I want to get you focused on is first is the low-hanging fruit. I want you to get focused on the priorities that are going to impact top line and bottom line in a huge way, in a magnificent way. I want you to think about doubling, tripling your numbers. What are the things that you could do to do that? And then find the low-hanging fruit, which are the low degree of difficulty things, and those are usually the process breaks. And the example is the treatment solutions network. When we fixed that sales problem, revenue skyrocketed, cash skyrocketed, cost dropped, and it just took us 30 days to see that result. That's a low-hanging fruit. Then I want you to think about, as we move sideways, I want you to think about the significant projects, all right? I want you to think about those things that are going to take quarters, maybe years, but when you built it, you're going to scale, so your cost structure is going to change, or customers are going to come in much, much easier and faster. And I want you to think about those projects. So as you're planning, what I want you to do is I want you to come up with your team with as many ideas as possible. And you got to put a dollar amount on each one of, in this case, stickies that you put up. So if you fix whatever the major processes, what are the dollars that are going to flow to your bottom line because you did that? What is the impact for doing that? And I want you to figure that out for every one of the ideas you have in terms of priorities. And then what I want you to do is I want you to narrow it down to the top 3 to 5. And it's not that the other stuff shouldn't be fixed someday. And you know, if you can do it and it's not a nuisance and it doesn't take away from the focus and time you put on the low-hanging fruit and the significant projects, then go ahead and do it. But the reality is, when I usually sit with you as an owner and I ask you, we set out and we had a major priority this quarter, did you do it? The answer is no. I got too busy chasing today's fires. I got too busy chasing the bubbles, chasing the squirrels, that I didn't spend enough time on these things. ask yourself, ask your team, are you setting aside enough time for those most important things for you to do? The answer is going to be probably not. And the less stickies, the better. And I'm bigger, and the better ones are the ones that are going to actually make most of the bubbles and most of the squirrels actually go away when you fix these problems in your business. So I've taught you 5 things, right? I've taught you about price. I've taught you about open positions. I've talked to you about changing out the non-performers. I've talked to you about prioritization. Here's what I want you to do now. This is your homework. I want you to go back and I want you to brainstorm all your ideas before you choose. If you haven't already done it this quarter, this is the first thing I want you to do. Is I want you to leave this webinar, this session, and I want you to go back with your team and come up with your best ideas. I want you to prioritizing it, using the matrix I shared with you, putting the dollars, thinking about the degree of difficulty and the degree of impact. And then the most important thing I want you to do is I want you to act. Too often you brainstorm, you have lots of ideas. Too often you prioritize, but you've made a decision, but you did not make a commitment. We decide on things all the time, like New Year's. How many people say, I'm going to lose weight this year? They start out of the gate ready to lose weight, and then a month in, they forget about it. This is the same thing with your priorities. I want you to be committed. I don't want you to decide. I want you to commit, because when we're committed as owners, committed as leaders, we finish what we start. That's what commitment's all about. We do whatever it takes because we know we must, and not doing what we decide is unacceptable. That's what I mean by act. So here's what I want you to be able to do now. I want you to go and I want you to download this tool. This is a free resource I want to give to you. Go to howardmshore.com/resources. howardmshore.com/resources. In there, you're going to find not only this calculator, which will give you pages of instructions on how to fill it out to help you better prioritize your options for improving growth every quarter. I want you to go fill that out. I want you to download it. There's also other great tools in there. So today, I'm not going to bore you about both books. I'm just going to tell you, read Your Business is a Leaky Bucket first, all right? I wrote this book because I saw from every business I was involved in, every business that I've ever come in contact with had the same 15 business leaks. I've already shared a few with them today. And it's just in different degrees. You never close the leaks. This is the honest, ugly truth. The question is, do you have some gushers? And your leaks are constantly moving as you move through the cycle. And the better you get at focusing on these leaks, you're actually going to see money show up. And you wouldn't have expected it. Most of our clients, their bottom lines become what their top line was just a year or two before. I've got one of those right now. They were doing $3.5 million last year. They did $1 million last month. Last year, they really didn't make any money. We're going to start earning this year. They're doing about 35%. They'll be, when we finish the year, at 40% net profit. So their bottom line this year at about 10 million is going to be 4 million. And I think they're going to break the 10 million. And think about it, last year, they only did 3.5 million in revenue. This is what is capable, what you can do if you apply the things in my book. So here's what I want you to do. I'm making this harder on me. Send a subject line. I will send you a free copy of my book. I'm not here to sell books. I will send you a free copy of my book. Just put in the subject line, Leaky Bucket. Here's my personal email address, not to a salesperson, not to anybody else. Send this to me. I will send you a link so you can get a free electronic download of my book. Don't even go and spend the money. Do that. If you want another version, if you want a Audible or whatever, then go and buy it. But download the book because there's so many more tips in there. Right now, I can't cover all of that for you, and I want to make sure we cover it. And lastly, I want to challenge you. Are you happy with being good? Are you complacent? Or are you striving every day and playing to win to be great, right? Most companies used to play to win, and now they're playing not to lose. I want you to play to win. Tighten. Russ, the owner of Titan, made that decision that while he was bigger than the average bear in his business, his profit was already above industry average. Good was not good enough, and being the best was the only place he wanted to be. In a very short time, we were able to triple size in an industry where the average growth rate is 5%. We were able to get net profit margin over 25% in an industry that has a 5% net profit margin. And we were able to get 3 times the number of employees to be all in. And if you want to learn how to do that, you need to download my book and you need to implement the concepts we have today. Last, this is how you contact me. Go to our website, fill out a form, send me an email, call me. All right. I want to help business leaders take things to a whole nother level than you never imagined. And I'm not like an accountant. I'm not like an attorney. You're going to get on a phone with me, and I'm going to make sure you walk away with at least one idea that you're going to go implement immediately to help you move your business. So at this point, I am done presenting, and I'm here to answer questions.
Howard, phenomenal job. And anybody that has questions, go ahead and type them in. So I want to talk to everybody real quick about why I brought, again, Howard in here. So Howard and I are in a mastermind together. And on the back table, there's sometimes books. And I'm a book junkie. Like, to me, I feel like I'm stealing something when I get a free book. I'm like, why would somebody give away something so valuable? Or maybe I did something wrong by even getting this thing of value. And then what happened is I grabbed Howard's book and I threw it in my book pile of normal books. I don't really think much about it. Well, then I'm traveling to Phoenix, Arizona, and actually going to another mastermind in Tempe. And Howard's book was one of the few that I actually had in there to be able to read. So that being said, I grabbed this book, I go through it, and it's phenomenal. Now, I don't know about you. I'm sure you read a lot because you're an entrepreneur like me. And sometimes I read books and I get one concept. That's it. I just great if I make it to the end and I grab a concept. And I love that. Then there are books that you get 10, 15 concepts, all actionable information, all executable. That's exactly what Howard's book did. So all of a sudden, I had all these ideas, came back, met with my COO, started discussing all these changes that we're going to make. And fast forward, we went from measuring our business in the form of revenue, like so many business owners do. I make this much in revenue. I make this much in revenue. It doesn't matter what you make in revenue. What matters is what you keep. It's your profit. That's the money that goes back in to fuel the business. That's what goes in your pocket. And let's be honest, as an entrepreneur, you're there to financially create freedom for your family. And so we implemented a lot of these concepts, established a net margin from near zero where we were up to about 20% plus where we should be. And now it's a whole different world, running a business with having plenty of access to cash versus not. And a lot of it happened because of executing these principles in this book. So again, the reason I wanted to bring Howard on today is because I often talk about how to get money to grow your business. But if we don't at least sometimes jump in to how to run the business, how to manage the business, how to manage the financials, how to keep more of your profit, then you're just going to be chasing your tail. You're going to make the same mistakes so many entrepreneurs make, trying to fix the problem by growth. Well, if I get another 2 million in revenue, another million in revenue, $500,000 in revenue, it's going to fix my cash problems. I'm going to be sitting on a bunch of cash. Let me tell you from somebody that's done that at a 6-figure business, a 7-figure business, an 8-figure business, you never grow it to a point where that solves the problem. Growth never does. You have to fix the leaky bucket. You have to figure out where you're losing money, make adjustments there, get your margins intact, then get your profits there. Then from there, you can run a healthy business. And I don't care if you do $1 million in sales or you do 20 million in sales. The bottom line is the one in a million that has their margins right typically is making a lot more in actual profit than the one at 20. This book will show you how to do it. And what Howard does with the executive coaching also walks you through a lot of the process. Howard, can you mention your new book too? Because I haven't read it yet. It's literally up there on mine. I said the next book to read when I'm done with some wilderness training book that's teaching me how to eat healthy mushrooms if I'm ever stuck in the forest. Yours is the next book. So tell us a little bit about what's in that one.
So that's the Leader Launchpad. Quick question. Did you hear the presentation I just got knocked off at the end?
Very end. The whole thing was good. When we opened it up for Q&A, you dropped out for a second, but everybody's good. We didn't even notice that you dropped out there.
So I'm super glad that I didn't talk for 45 minutes to myself.
I would have stopped you. That's why.
And I definitely want to answer questions questions to what I just said, because many times people are listening to that, right? And they're like, Howard, it can't be that simple. Or my problems are different, and I'll be happy if anybody wants to jump in live. We'll fix some problems. So to be able to plug my second book, it's called The Leader Launchpad. So here's what happened. After my book did super well, people are like, now what? What do I do? I've implemented a bunch of the ideas in the book, but I want to scale to a whole nother level, and I want the operating system to do it. And so what I realized was, I know you are like me, Ty, we read like a new book a week. But as owners, as leaders, how do we implement all of that stuff? It's just too much. So I took all the things I've learned over the last 35 plus years, and I got it into one book. So I took 50 plus of the best business books on the planet that everybody's used to, Good to Great and Scaling Up and all of that, and I put together in a usable format to show everybody how to tie it all together. Because here's the issue. This is the dirty little secret. All of us, when we started our businesses, all right, we had a product or service we wanted to offer. That's how we started, and many of us, we just knew we weren't employable. So we were like, all right, I need to get a job, I need to make some money. We didn't think about what's going to happen when I have 50, I have 100, I have 1,000 employees. What do we do? How do we do that? How do we get there? And so what I realize is we all have 6 systems that we need to master to be able to get there. You need strategy, you need execution, you need cash, right? Cash is oxygen. We're talking about that today. But around all of that, in my book, I call it stewardship. We have to worry about team cohesiveness. No longer can we have these individual star players. We need star teams, and we're all on a bunch of teams. We need to build a culture that causes people to come seek to work for us rather than us go get them. And then I realized that we also needed this very robust human capital management system that helped us pre-plan what the seats are, know what those seats needed to do, know how to get the right people in the seats and what to do. And here's the thing. Framed around our infrastructure is all people, soft things we didn't really want to worry about. We just had to. Team cohesiveness, culture, and people, right? And then in the center, you've got cash, execution, and strategy. But here's the thing. You can't be weak in any of the systems. Just think about it this. If I have a toxic culture, are your best people going to stay? The answer is freaking no. All right. If you have terrible teams, those best people aren't going to stay. And then you can't attract great people into an organization that's mediocre. All right. They just won't come. They don't want to come. And if you do get them to come, you're going to pay battle pay, right? So we've got to get those things right. And it's only when we have those things right that now you can really implement your strategy. So they all play off of each other. And I'm going to guarantee everybody is listening to this, at least 2 of the 6 systems you're weak in right now, maybe more. All right, so we got to work on the ones that are holding you back, and then it's like whack-a-mole, because if we fix one area, the other one gets off kilter, and that's why I wrote the book.
Love it. So a couple questions here. Louis says, is there any app or software that can kind of help put some of this on autopilot?
Yes, I'm so glad you and by the way, I have no ownership in this company, but every one of our clients use it. Every CEO that I meet, I want them to go to Metronome Growth Systems, all right? The Metronome system is a great platform, regardless of what you're using, whether you are an EOS implementer, you're implementing our system, scaling up, whatever. It's flexible, and what it allows you to do is tie the long term all the way down to what somebody needs to do this week and make sure you're working on the big things, you're tracking metrics. It's actually the software that sits on top of everything else. It doesn't replace your accounting system. It doesn't replace your CRM. It is the leadership operating software to keep everybody on the same page.
And Linda says, Howard, what would you suggest the next step be for setting up a new office? What are some things to consider when setting up a new office?
So when you're setting up a new office, first of all, actually in this day and age, the first question is, do I need an office? All right, so many of us grew up, and I'm 56, so I look back in time. I never imagined virtual employees. I've worked with companies that have thousands of employees, 100% virtual. So the first question is, do I need an office? Maybe you need an address, maybe you don't, maybe you just need a place to stay. So yes, you're going to ask that. But what you really want to ask is your growth model. So I don't know whether this is your first office or you're expanding. So I'll give you an example of one of our clients that's expanding. We're adding new offices almost every month. But really what they are is it's a virtual office. And what we've set up is we've figured out so that we don't need too much overhead. What is it that we need on the ground in each city? How do we build that? And how do we build a leadership structure so that I don't have to replicate what I have at headquarters? And I'm going to ask that always. I want to keep the organization flat. So how do I keep it flat? And how do I give the customer exactly what they need locally? And that's all I want to do locally. Everything else I can do centralized. So that's the question I'm going to ask. If it's your new office, then that's a whole different, that's a whole different can of worms. So I need to know whether she or he is asking about a new office, the first one, or if it's expanding. And if it's the new first office, then I need to give a different answer.
So no, it sounds like you're spot on. And T says, can we get the system name in the chat? I think the system that you named. What was the system that you just mentioned?
It's Metronome. I'm putting it in here right now. And I'm sorry, I don't type well. Metronome Growth Systems.
Perfect. And then Howard, can you do me a favor and pull up your presentation again so they have your contact info?
Yes, you got it.
Okay. And she said this. Well, actually, she said this is my first office.
Okay. And then it's a different discussion. And if she reaches out to me, I will be happy to help. So
Howard's going to pull up his contact info, and then we're going to wrap up. I've got a podcast interview here in 3 minutes. Speaking of setting up offices with the president, CEO of Alliance Virtual Offices. So we'll be meeting him. So look forward to that on our podcast soon. So I want to thank you for tuning in. Howard's going to pull up his contact information right now. Look, it's worth a call. It's worth an email to set up time to see what he can do, what he can walk through to help you become more profitable. If nothing else, make sure you grab one of Howard's 2 books, especially Your Business is a Leaky Bucket, from somebody that's went through it and got a lot of strategies that will help us make millions and millions of dollars in profit from what we were losing before because our business was a leaky bucket. I can tell you this thing is one of those packed full of actionable items that's definitely worth grabbing. And again, he even's giving you free access to the book by just emailing him direct. Howard's going to pull up the contact information right now. And Linda is saying, this virtual up. Yep, we got it right here. I'm going to pull it up.
I thought it was up and it wasn't.
And Mark says, Ty is using the word cash in my business name. High risk. It's not, but anything that indicates you're in financial services can put you there. So the word cash, which is my son's name, by the way, so I love the word, could put you at a high risk as financial services. So something to consider there. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I have got to be out of here in 2 minutes for a live podcast interview. Howard, thanks, man, for tuning in. This was fantastic. A lot of actionable information and value here. I really appreciate it.
Ty, thank you for having me, and everyone have an awesome day.
So make sure you get with Howard again, free copy of his book. You can also get the book on Amazon. If you want a free copy, then email him. You can even set up more time to talk more about, again, the growth hacks that you really need to supercharge your business. And most importantly, keep more of your money to actually run a really highly profitable business, not just a business. And Lydia said, I think it was Linda says, please send me the link to your podcast. To my podcast is at the top of my page, creditsuite.com. If you go to creditsuite.com, you can look right there, click iTunes, and access our podcast. Howard, do you have a podcast too?
I don't. I just participate in them.
He doesn't yet, but he's going to. I'm going to talk to him after this. It's going to happen. So make sure you check out activategroupinc.com. That's activategroupinc.com. Take a quick screenshot. Reach out to Howard as well for a free copy of his book, or grab his book, Your Business is a Leaky Bucket, on Amazon. And I look forward to seeing you on our next training. We're talking about more cool ways to get money to start and grow your business. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.